Guys, I've seen a lot of different slum and ghetto neighborhoods around the world. But all of them in poor countries have one thing in common. There's always a huge number of children, teenagers, young people. This is the first ghetto for old folks that I've ever seen in my life. It's a huge neighborhood that is populated predominantly by elderly people. There are young and middle-aged people here, of course, but predominantly local inhabitants are old. Just look at this. Elderly. All these people are pretty old. Elderly people ride bicycles. We're in Nishinari neighborhood in downtown Osaka, the largest slum neighborhoods in Japan. But it's not the only one. The capital, Tokyo, also has ghettos with predominantly elderly population, the largest of which is Sanya. But, well, we'll talk about that later. Old folks settle around business hotels, as they are called in Japan, although these establishments are not for business people at all, and it is difficult to call them hotels. They're more like lodging houses. Just look at what people sleep on. The den is, all the person has is just a tiny little cubbyhole. There's just a mattress on the floor, some kind of tattered mattress, a blanket, and this is not even a pillow. It's hard to say what it is. A sack of sort. Mr. Watanabe is showing me his place. Before I came in, he'd cleaned it thoroughly. There's only room for one bed here. Do you have a family?
No.
How old are you?
おいくつですか?
80.
80.
Arigatou gozaimasu. 80 years old, no family. That's probably the most common situation people who live in business hotels find themselves in. I mean, these are the same Japanese who didn't have kids. They were also like part of the last generation of the 90s. So they didn't have good jobs, good careers, and consequently, no good pensions. And so now, this is the only kind of livelihood that they can afford. All of the facilities are shared. This is the bathroom. The water's obviously not being conserved. Someone left it running. Nothing works here, I see. Here, guys, this is the kitchen, and they offer to Japanese pensioners. It's filthy. The oven's all rusty. Microwave. Is that a pantry? That smells so bad. I'm not even going in there. It stinks. 1,200 yen a day for this hotel. So that's going to be about $300 a month. That's probably the cheapest possible place to live in Japan. Here's a more modern boarding house of the same kind. You can see it looks much better on the outside, but inside... Excuse me, sir. Can I film a little bit? You see, it's an absolutely tiny room where there's only a bed, you roll it up, and well, they spend all their time. It's maybe like 6 square meters.
No.
Okay, I'm going. Almost all of the buildings in these neighborhoods are business hotels. Here you go, guys. 1,200 yen a night. The bathroom is shared. There's a TV, air conditioning, a closet. You know, everything you need. Who said hotels in Japan are expensive? Look, for 1,200 yen, you get a little room like this with a mattress on the floor. But there are more expensive options. For 1,800 yen, there's a real bed. Lots of space. There's even a table, a TV, air conditioning. 1,800 yen is about $14. Some of the local business hotels have plans of the rooms that you can rent. Well, here first comes the more expensive option, with its own toilet, but it's an upscale cubbyhole. 7.7 square meters, that's 40,000 yen a month. And here's a cheaper one. It's only 7.4 square meters, and it also has its own toilet, which is kind of a high end here. And it says here, instant check-in is possible. In fact, most of these hotels, they don't work by reservation. You just go there with your stuff and stay as long as you have money for. Then you go back out into the street. Then when you've saved some money, that you've earned something, you move back in. You live there for a few days, wash up, get yourself together, and then move back out into the street. Japanese society is already almost 1/3 pensioners. Now their share is about 30% and is increasing rapidly. This is how the distribution of population by age and sex looks like in the world as a whole. Men and women are almost equal. At the bottom are children, and there are more of them. At the top are elderly, and then there are fewer of them. That's why it's called the population pyramid. This is India, a pyramid in which there are more men. You see, the left half is wider. Here's Russia. It looks more like a pillar than a pyramid. And you see, in the older generation at the top, on the contrary, there are significantly more women. That's because of wars and alcohol. And here's what the statistics look like for Japan. It's no longer a pyramid, but a palm tree, where there are a few children but more and more people as they get older. Since 2011, more diapers have been sold in Japan for the elderly than for babies. And in the small town of Hoki, senior diapers are a major source of garbage.
On this side are the bags.
This side is used diapers, and on this side is all the other waste.
And now they use them to make enough pellets to heat this whole town. It's the elderly who make up the bulk of Japan's poor. To make ends meet, old folks have to work for the rest of their lives. They often work even harder than they did when they were younger because now they are paid less. The inhabitants of these neighborhoods are mostly so-called piece workers, which means that they look for a job every day. It's considered lucky to work as a taxi driver. Almost all of them in Japan are pensioners, but not many people are that lucky. Look at the shoes of many of the residents of such neighborhoods. Those who can't afford the rent and business hotel permanently move to parks. This, guys, is a real slum. I mean, self-built, made out of sticks and twigs and cellophane and whatever. See, the door is made out of some kind of plywood. It's very similar to what it looks like in some poor countries in the rest of Asia or Africa or Latin America. Here, we have people who can't even afford business hotels. It's such a stark contrast to the bright, rich, high-tech Japan that many people in the country don't even know about these neighborhoods in their cities. How many years have you lived here?
あなたはここに何年住んでいますか?
Did you have a house before?
以前は家がありましたか?
今もある。
I used to.
Why do you live here?
なぜここに住んでいるの?
Times have changed.
In fact, many of the people who now find themselves in Japan's slum and self-built neighborhoods are here because the heyday of their career was in 1991, a time of economic downturn. The thing is that Japan had, especially back then in the 90s, a system of lifetime employment. At that time, companies, large corporations used to hire once a year. Usually in April, they chose between the graduating seniors. This procedure was called haizoku and can resemble a military roll call.
Who wants to work at the store? I do. No matter how hard it gets, I will never betray my store.
where students not only get interviewed, but also pledge their loyalty to the future employer. And then these students worked for this corporation their entire lives. Career advancement doesn't happen because of personal merit, but because the time has come. Every corporation cultivates the employees it needs for the future. So, if you fell out of the company halfway through, it was extremely difficult to get back in. And so people were laid off en masse in 1991. In 92, 93, 94, the crisis continued, and they still couldn't find a job. And that was it. They couldn't find the job anymore. Suppose you were 35 in 1991, and you were in the head of some department, a middle manager, and a quite successful one, with, let's say, a nice apartment, with a nice car, and the perspective if you'll be even richer by the time you're 45 or 50. And then you're fired. And then you have to realize that you can't fit back into the lifetime employment system. These people have been called the lost generation, and at least 1 million of them are now the old poor.